Hey guys, I'm back with David Pakman, and we're knocking out some of our favorite stories of the week. I saw this on Politico, an interesting story about how millennials get the news. A huge percentage of you guys are millennials. That means that you're Pakman. What does it mean? They're basically under 25-ish?
No, but millennial is,
What are
I think, all
millennials
the way
these
back
damn kids?
to born in 1980, I think still counts as the cutoff.
So what's interesting here mostly, I think, is that 61% of millennials, which is an incredibly high number, are getting their news on Facebook. It's a little bit less for the old timers like me at 51%. And for baby boomers, which is, the 50 to probably 75-ish crowd right now, they're still getting the bulk of it on local TV. But the first thing that popped up in my mind when I was looking at this, though, was this thing about catered news and how we're catering news to ourselves constantly. And Facebook is the ultimate example of this, right? Because you're friends with people that usually like the things that you like. You're interacting with people who probably have mostly the same political beliefs as you. So it seems to me there's some inherent risk of us all just getting this like really catered small piece of information instead of the whole picture.
Yes and no. I mean, the thing I thought of when I saw this is this study has options for where you get your news that are not necessarily equivalent, in the sense that, for example, getting your news from MSNBC versus getting your news from Google News are not the same, because Google News is mostly an aggregator. So when I saw, oh, all these people are getting their news from Facebook, Facebook isn't reporting anything. What it is your Facebook friends and the algorithm are making it so you can click on articles from other news sources. So in a sense, Facebook has become like a news curation service.
Right, but isn't that the risk, though? Because you're mostly going to get news curated to you that's only going to reinforce what you believe, because you're probably friends with people that believe similar things.
Yeah, unless you're me, in which case it seems everybody on my Facebook hates me, but that's a different story. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It sort of reinforces this echo chamber that already exists. We see people who watch Fox News, other than those like me who check it out to see what insane thing is happening over there so I can critique it, are doing that because it's already sort of the type of mentality that they sympathize with. So yeah, there's certainly that risk. The other element of it is that aside from the Facebook algorithm showing stuff you might already be predisposed to like or that your friends like, is whether Facebook as a curation service has any kind of bias, and that would be a sort of other conversation.
Right. So we don't know, and I don't think it's public knowledge exactly how they do their algorithm. I guess the bigger part here is that young people, millennials, just simply don't trust mainstream news, which that in itself I think is pretty good, because mainstream news is pretty awful. Isn't it, guy who's on the internet doing news?
Yeah, and I refer to it now as corporate media, because it's really, you can have a corporate media outlet that chooses to take a more liberal editorial point of view like MSNBC, or a corporate media outlet that, like Fox News, says we're going to have a more conservative editorial position, but you're still talking about that corporate media machine that's tied in directly with the elected officials and with their advertisers, and it's this whole sort of incestuous circle that we've pointed out.
Right. So us as online people, we suffer from another piece. Look, they're getting their money from the very people they're supposed to be covering, and that's obviously a huge problem. Everyone understands that. For us, we have to get clicks. Like at the end of the day, not only are we paid by clicks on YouTube, it's very low. I don't want to get into that right now because it'll make you cry. But we have to get clicks. Like it's as simple as that. So then sometimes you might cater your stories and curate your stories in such a way that are going to get you more clicks, as opposed to doing stuff that you think is purely relevant, right?
Sure, but there's a line, and I've had this conversation. When I did Gamergate stuff, and you and I have talked about Gamergate coverage, someone decided to accuse me of clickbait with my titles, and then it spread like wildfire, where all of a sudden it was all David Pakman does clickbait titles. And I actually had this conversation with someone who was critiquing me, and I said, so let's take a step back here. Are the titles inaccurate? Do they not represent what the video is? Oh, the titles do represent what's in the video. So what you're saying is I'm cherry picking the most interesting elements of a video to put in the title so that people will watch it. That, we can have the conversation of whether something is overly salacious or what have you, But to me, it's much less concerning than hearing that I didn't cover a story because I'm paid by a certain company, right? That's just horrible.
Sure. Sure. And by the way, to your credit with that whole Gamergate thing, and we did discuss it once on your show, I wanted to start covering it, and it was such a deluge of insanity and misinformation and confusion that I was like, you know what, I just can't handle this one.
Yeah.
You've done a really nice job of it. What do you think about, I have a firm belief that, because of the corporate media and the mainstream media controlling everything for so long, that there was a couple of years, probably about 5 years ago, 5 or 8 years ago, where the online media became incredibly important because we were finally getting this alternate voice. What I see happening now is, since everyone can have a voice, which is the democratization of the internet, and it's really great, but because of that, there's also no fact-checking anymore. So everything that's online is pretty much not fact-checked. It's fact-checked maybe by the commenters, but we're not held to any standard. I tell the truth the best I can, and I source everything the best I can. But I also think there's some risk in everyone talking about the news where there's just nobody to really go, well, here, there's nobody trustworthy enough, I think, at this point to go, well, here's actually what the facts are. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's an issue. And this, anytime you have a sort of new platform, it takes a while for the public at large to sort of synthesize how it is that they should be interpreting or understanding it. It's kind of like if you were to go back to when you had to go to the movie theater to get the news headlines from what was going on in the war. If you were to walk into that room and just give someone a tablet and have a video of Alex Jones or something like that, their understanding of how to interpret the sort of validity of Alex Jones would be mostly determined by their understanding of the news they were getting in the movie theater. So that's, I think, just something that's going to play itself out. And you already start to have reputation systems and so on, which help to discern and let the better stuff rise to the top, hopefully anyway.
For sure. And that's why I always like talking to you, because I know you do your research and you're telling the truth. And I'm sure you've fact-checked yourself once or twice, right?
Yeah, if I made a mistake, I will correct it as soon as possible. No question about it. Now, where there are sometimes disagreements is when people can't distinguish between a news and an opinion show. And this is just a basic media literacy issue that we have in this country, where people will write to me and they'll say, David, I like you because you're less biased than Fox News. And I say, you fundamentally don't understand what I'm doing, because you're talking about a different barometer. I do an opinion program, not original reporting.
Right. And that is the interesting thing, because everyone seems to want opinion programming, right? That's what people seem to be watching, personality-driven stuff. That's usually based in bias at some level. Often they admit it, right? If you're working for MSNBC, obviously you're on the left. And if you're at Fox, you're obviously on the right. But I think it makes for an interesting piece for those of us that are online and are trying to bring this. And I like the fact that our audiences hold us to a high standard.